some commitment that you would stand up and applaud in the afternoon session right after lunch. Thank you. Thank you. Let's do it again. I come with a very simple message, and the simple message is this: that there is more joy to be found in owning less than we can ever find pursuing more. This is a message that I think we already know to be true. Unfortunately, we live in a world that tells us the exact opposite message. We see 5,000 advertisements every single day, and every single advertisement at its core, at its foundation, tells us that our life will be better if we buy whatever they're selling. Our life will be happier, it'll be more convenient, it'll be more luxurious, it'll be more meaningful. Our life will improve if we buy this thing. And I think what happens is we hear this message so many times from the day we were born that very subtly, subconsciously, we begin to believe it. And slowly, we start living lives where we are constantly pursuing bigger houses, nicer cars, more clothing, newer technology, this, that, whatever it might be. But we all know it's not true, right? We all know possessions don't make us happy. And so I think when someone comes along and reminds us that there's actually more joy to be found in owning less, it rings true in our heart, and it resonates in our soul. And so maybe I'm here to just remind you of something that deep down you already know to be true. I'd like to start by sharing my story a little bit, and then I want to have a little conversation about minimalism. They say discontent is the greatest seed of change in our lives. And for most of my life, I've had two streams of discontent that have flown through my life. Number one, I've always been a little discontented with my money. Anyone else? Anyone else? A little discontented with money. I think I just saw the statistics yesterday. 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. 85% of Americans have financial related stress. So my discontent was no different than what most of you are feeling. Not only was I discontented that I was never quite able to get ahead financially, I was always a little discontented on not just how much money I was spending, but who I was spending my money on. And by that I mean almost all of our money, at least 90%, seemed to be spent on myself, on my family. I grew up in a church. I was a pastor at the time, and I was just thinking, I'm not sure I'm supposed to be spending so much money on myself, but never quite able to find a way out. So I was always a little discontented about money. The second stream of discontent, I've begun to explain this way. I was growing discontent over the focus of my life's energy. The focus of my life's energy, which I don't think I ever would have been able to articulate had it not been for a Saturday morning 10 years ago. I was living in Vermont, and my wife and I woke up on Memorial Day weekend to do spring cleaning. We were going to clean all day Saturday. Sunday, I had to work. Monday, we were finally going to be able to enjoy this beautiful holiday weekend with our two kids. My son Salem was 5. My daughter Alexa was 2. I woke up. I offered to clean out the garage. Sounded like a manly project. It was going to be nice and sunny. I thought for sure my 5-year-old son would love cleaning the garage with his father. Right? Such a dad thing to think. I get my son Salem up out of bed. We go for breakfast. I fix him bacon and eggs. We have this really nice breakfast. And he's like, "What's going on, Dad?" And I'm like, "I've got a surprise for you." So we go out in the garage. It's been this long winter. Everything's dirty and dusty and disorganized. And I'm like, "Salem, here's what we're going to do. Let's take everything out of the garage, We'll hose it all down. We'll return everything in this nice, organized fashion, and then it'll be clean for the summer months. I said, Salem, can you go grab that blue plastic bin and pull it out into the driveway? Which ends up being my biggest mistake of the day, because this blue plastic bin was full of all of my son's summer toys. Yeah, his wiffle ball and his wiffle ball bat and plastic golf clubs and football and frisbee and all this stuff, right? He hasn't seen it in 9 months, like the 9-month-long winter in Vermont. Hasn't seen it forever. As soon as he sees his ball and his bat, the last thing he wants to do is help me clean the garage. And so he runs up to me. He's got the ball and the bat. Hey, Dad, can I go play with these? I'm like, oh, man. 20 seconds, that's all I'm gonna get. I'm like, yes, you go play, that's fine. So he's about to run into the back. Before he rounds the corner, turns his head. He says, well, aren't you gonna come play catch with me? And I said, no, I'm not gonna come play catch with you. I'm cleaning the garage. Somebody has to do it. As soon as I'm done, we'll get to play. He goes off in the back. I start working in the garage. One thing leads to another. Hours later, I'm still in the same garage. My son's running up about every 20, 30 minutes to see if I'm done, to see if I'm about ready to play. I keep pushing him off, right? One more minute, I'm almost done. We've all been there, right? One more minute, I'm almost done. Well, as this is taking place, my neighbor June, she's in her 80s, and she's doing all of her yard work, which has now become a bucket list item for me, that my wife will do the yard work into her 80s. This is my hope. Hasn't started yet, but maybe sometime between now and then. But she's raking leaves and pulling weeds and trimming the hedges, and I think she's seeing what's happening on my side of the hedge. At one point, we happened to walk past each other on the boundary line, and she knows what's going on over here. She's lived it. And she says to me, oh, the joys of home ownership. And she's very sarcastic, and I said, well, you know what they say, the more stuff you own, the more your stuff owns you, which I had read on a cat poster somewhere, I think. Never really figured out what it actually meant. She responds with a life-changing sentence. She says to me, yeah, you know, that's why my daughter is a minimalist. She keeps telling me I don't need to own all this stuff. And I stood speechless, as if this was the first time in the world somebody had told me that I didn't have to try to own everything. And I remember looking over at my driveway, and here's this pile of dirty, dusty things I don't care hardly anything about, piled up in my driveway. I would have said, like everyone else, that my possessions weren't making me happy. I wasn't looking for happiness in my possessions. We would all say that, right? I'm looking at the pile of stuff in my driveway, and out of the corner of my eye, I see my 5-year-old son swinging alone on the swing set in the backyard. And I suddenly had this further realization. Not only was everything I owned not making me happy, even worse, everything I owned was actually taking me away from the very thing that did bring me happiness in life. And not just happiness, but meaning and purpose, significance and joy. This is a very different realization. It's one thing to say our possessions aren't making us happy. It's something very different when we realize that all this stuff we've pursued and accumulated is actually keeping us from happiness, is actually distracting us from the life we wish we were living instead. It was a pretty short conversation with June. I ran inside. My wife was cleaning one of the bathrooms. My 2-year-old was pulling at her pant leg. And I said, Kim, you'll never guess what June just said. She said we don't have to own this stuff anymore. And Kim's like, you know what? That sounds pretty good right about now. I said, I know, doesn't it sound amazing? And so I ran to the internet, as any 21st century adult does. I ran to the internet, I typed in, like, what is a minimalist lifestyle? And I started reading about all these people. I started reading about a guy named Dave Bruno. He lived in California. He owned just 100 things. I read about a guy named Colin Wright. Everything he owned fit in a backpack. He moved to a new country every 3 months. I read about a couple in Portland named Logan and Tammy Strobel. They had a ton of debt. They moved into a 200 square foot tiny home. They owned just 100 things between them, like 2 cups and 2 forks and 1 cat, and somehow that made the list. And it was very interesting as I started looking at the different ways people were living out minimalism. For one thing, I noticed that it always looked different from one person to another. The guy with 6 kids who lived in Guam was living minimalism a little bit differently than the guy with 40 things in a backpack that moved every couple months, was different than the professor who had 3 daughters in California. They were all doing it a little bit differently. I found a lot of freedom in that. Obviously, minimalism is going to look different from person to person based on a number of different factors. But I also noticed that there seemed to be an underlying goal, an underlying purpose as to why they were pursuing minimalism. There was something else that they wanted to do with their life. They wanted to travel the world. They wanted to test their boundaries. They wanted to get out of debt. They wanted to change their job. They wanted to retire early. It was looking different always from one person to another. And I learned this about minimalism. It actually became my definition of minimalism. Minimalism is the intentional promotion of the things we most value in life by removing anything that distracts us from it. Minimalism is the intentional promotion of the things we most value in life by removing anything that distracts us from it. With that as the mindset, we began going through our home. It took us about 9 months. We got rid of about 60-70% of our possessions. I'm not going to get too much into the details. I have a town hall this evening at, I don't know, it's on your app, 7 o'clock maybe. I have a town hall this evening, and we'll do more of the questions. But skipping over that for the moment, I called my mom on that Saturday, and I'm like, hey, Mom, we've decided to become minimalist. And I'll never forget her response because it went like this. Oh, Joshua, I was just watching Oprah. I'm like, oh, great. She was interviewing some minimalists. Did you know that they don't go to the grocery store, but they get all their food out of dumpsters? And I thought to myself, I don't remember reading that in anywhere in the literature. Did I remember reading that? Well, I've since come to know that there are people, and this is one of their values, is to not spend any money on food, and they're called freegans. This is true, this is a term. I can see, they're not the same as minimalists, although I can see why Oprah might have them on the same show. That's basically how I saw it. Anyway, after that conversation with my mom, I started a website, becomingminimalist.com. Mostly, I wanted to journal what was happening, the decisions we were making, what was happening in my life, what we were learning. I wanted my mom to know we are still buying FDA-approved produce for her kids, if it means anything. But I started the blog, and this was 11 years ago. The first month, we had 2 readers. I don't think my wife was even reading at the time. Now over 1 million readers every single month come to becomingminimalist.com. The Facebook page is at 1.5 million. I've written several books on the subject, started 2 magazines. Publisher offered me more money than they should have paid me to write the books. I'm not buying stuff with my money, so we used the book advance and we founded a nonprofit called The Hope Effect that's changing how the world cares for orphans. I get to be here today. I've spoken in all across Sweden, Poland, Brazil, Canada, all across the country. This is a message that is drawing people in. We have reached a point of peak stuff in humanity. And when someone comes along with the message of owning less, people are drawn to it with their lives. One of the reoccurring themes on becomingminimalist.com as I was writing is every time I noticed a way that my life was improving, I would put in a little journal entry. As I'm owning less stuff, this is happening in my life. I'm gonna have you turn to your table, wherever you are, turn to your table. I'm gonna give you 30 seconds. List as many as you can. If you were to own less stuff, how would your life improve? In very practical ways. Go ahead, just 30 seconds for the sake of time. All right. Beautiful. Good ones. Those were good ones. Nicely done, people. Nicely done. Let me give you my list. Let me give you my list. Tell me if we match on any of them. Tell me if we match on anyone. Did anyone say less cleaning? Less cleaning. Yes, beautiful, right? Less cleaning, which when we own less stuff, there's less to clean, which it's not just about the cleaning, it's about the time, right? If I had less stuff, I would have more time available because it's not just the cleaning, it's all the organizing and managing and maintaining and repairing, replacing, recycling. Or how about this? How much time do we spend working just so we can make more money, so we can go do more shopping, to buy more things to bring home, to clean and organize and manage and maintain, repair, replace for the rest of our lives? As I began to own less stuff, I found more time for things that actually mattered. I found that I had more money available. More money means anything to any number of people. Maybe it means you're able to get out of debt. Maybe it means you're able to get ahead financially. Maybe it means you're able to begin giving more, becoming more generous. Maybe it means you're able to quit the job that you hate just because you're making a ton of money and start finding a different job that you love to do, knowing that you don't need nearly as much to live your life. More time, more money, less stress. Randy Elkhorn says it this way: every increased possession adds increased anxiety onto our lives. The New York Times recently called the modern American generation the most hurried, stressed, tired generation of all time. It is no small coincidence that we all own more stuff than has ever been owned in the history of humanity. And it's only adding to busyness and stress in our lives. More focus in our life, fewer decisions that we have to make. I'm able to live more in the present, freed up from the past. There's more space available. Do you know the average American home has tripled in size in the last 50 years? And still 10% of Americans rent off-site storage. More intentionality in life. I became a better example for my kids. Man, I hear people complain that their toddlers were throwing a fit in Target because they wanted something. And I always just think to myself, you know your toddler didn't drive themselves to Target. Like, you went to Target to buy something you want, and then you get mad that your kids want something that they want at Target? They're learning this from us. More opportunity to focus on my family, better life for the environment, more opportunity to own higher quality things. That owning less doesn't mean owning cheaper things. If I don't need to own 20 pairs of pants in my closet, I can have 4 or 5 pair that are particularly slimming. Less comparison with other people. Man, how much time, how much of our life do we waste comparing what we have with other people? And where are you ever going to find joy? In comparing the house that they live in, the car that they drive, the brand of clothing that they wear. There's no joy in comparing yourself with other people. More gratitude, more contentment, more generosity. I found more opportunity to understand myself. Man, I started taking van loads of things to Goodwill, and the first van load felt great. The second van load was like the third van load of things that I started taking to Goodwill. I started asking myself some pretty difficult questions, starting with, why in the world did I have 3 van loads of things in my house that I didn't need to have? Why do we buy things that we don't need? Why? Why would we buy things that we don't need? Man, I started looking at some of the motivations in my life, and I didn't like what I found. Jealousy, envy, selfishness, greed, trying to show my success to other people, trying to keep up with other people, trying to prove my value, impress others. Maybe I really was looking for happiness in all the things that I bought. I learned things about myself through this process I never dreamt possible. I also discovered, as I began to own less stuff, that I began to relearn and rediscover my purpose in life. And it happened very early on. I started getting rid of things and started asking myself some pretty difficult questions, like what do I need? What do I want to do with my life? What do I want to accomplish? And I remember putting it up on the blog, and a guy commented named Dustin, and he said to me, "It seems to me minimalism would force questions of values on you." And I said, that is exactly what is happening. As I begin removing distractions, as I begin thinking about what type of life I want to craft going forward, I can't help but come back to, what is it that I want to accomplish? What is my purpose in life? Man, distractions keep us from our purpose in life. And I rediscovered it through this process. Mark Twain once said, "The 2 most important days in a person's life are the day that they are born and the day they discover why." And I've started adding a 3rd day. The 3rd most important day is the day you remove everything that's keeping you from fulfilling that purpose.